Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We're back again with an incredible guest. Lynn, tell us all about him.
Yeah. Danny Levy has worked in senior leadership roles in Singapore for over 14 years, started and scaled 4 businesses, and achieved record profit results. We love profit. He is currently the managing director for Asia and ANZ of Money 2020, the world's largest leading premium content, sales, and networking platform for the global money ecosystem. Prior to this, Danny ran the APEC operations for worldwide business research for 10 years as managing director. During this time, he spearheaded expansions into new markets across Asia and ANZ, unlocking rapid growth and launched a successful new digital business for the company. In addition to running Money 2020, Danny also serves as the host of the Top 100 Business podcast, Digital Transformation and Leadership, and is a guest host on topics including digital transformation, technology, leadership, and on other leading podcasts, including South China Morning Post. So welcome, Danny.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the podcast. Thank you for the introduction. Actually, it makes me laugh when I hear sometimes worldwide business research, because I went to the US with the company a few years ago before I started with Money 2020, and I was going through immigration, and they said, "Oh, why are you here?" And I said, "I'm attending my company's event. We were running an e-commerce event in Palm Springs." And I was going through, he said, "Oh, okay, and what's the name of your company?" I said, "Worldwide Business Research." And he said, "That sounds made up. It's so generic."
It does actually sound a little
yeah. And he said, "What do you do?"
Officer,
yeah. So it made me laugh after that long flight from Singapore. But anyway, thank you for the introduction and nice to be here.
Yeah, we're super stoked to have you. So tell us a little bit more of how you got started into this business.
I think if you ask most people that have worked in kind of large scale B2B events for any kind of longer period of time, most will tell you that they fell into the industry. I don't think anyone really kind of goes to school and goes to university and thinks, I want to be a large scale events organizer or producer or salesperson. To be honest, when I finished university, I didn't even kind of really know the industry existed. And most of the time now, if I'm at a social function and you tell someone what you do, they might say, "Can you plan my wedding for me?" And you go, "That's not really what I do." But really, I did a history degree at university, and that doesn't really take you into a profession unless you want to go off and kind of do a master's and teach, or do a master's in something else like in business. So I probably finished university just as confused as when I started and wasn't quite sure what I should go into. And I ended up kind of stumbling into kind of PR and did a short stint in PR. And then when the kind of 2008 financial crash happened, I was looking for work in London. London's an expensive place. And I saw a post in Guardian Jobs about kind of B2B defense and security producer. And I'd done military history at university, and I thought that sounded quite interesting. Maybe that would align. I went for a few interviews, and I got the job in London. And really what it entailed was there's different stages of events. So you have kind of like stage 1 events, which are typically smaller scale events that might happen in a conference, and there might be happen in a hotel venue for a kind of a traditional conference, and they might be for like 50 to 100 people, maybe slightly larger, up to maybe 300. That's kind of what you'd consider a stage 1 event. And the research time is shorter on a stage 1 event. So if you're doing large scale events, which is what one of my older companies, Worldwide Business Research, did, or now very large scale with Money 2020, you have a much longer runway in because you would have fewer events to organize. But when I started, I had to produce 9 events a year, so it was really rapid. What was fascinating for me, though, was that I was kind of thrown in at the deep end, and you kind of given a topic. My first one was unmanned aerial drones that I had to research back in 2008. You don't know anything about it going in, and then you have basically a week or so just to conduct really intensive research. Doesn't sound like a long time, but you end up talking to like 5-star military generals about unmanned aerial drones with basically no experience. So it's really fascinating. For me, I kind of a little bit introverted, so I kind of enjoyed the one-to-one deep research time. It was before kind of video calls, I guess. So it was all over the phone. And then, yeah, really worked on that for a few years. And I went on and I produced drone events, military airlift events, border security, traveled all over the world. So it was really interesting. And that kind of period, I thought, oh, I'll work in this for a few months. Obviously, was extended. I went on to run one of the teams there, and then the opportunity in 2009, I think it was, or 2010, I can't remember now, but came up to move to Singapore. So the company I was with was opening an office in Singapore, and they said, "Do you want to go out and do that?" And I said, I was living in the East End of London at the time. Googled Singapore, Sentosa Island came up. I thought this looks much better than the East End of London. Moved to Singapore with my now wife. We were engaged at the time. We had one of those kind of service departments with a pool and a gym, and the weather was great. And I remember my wife turned to me and she said, "I never want to leave this place." And we never did. We're still here 15 years later. And so I worked for that company. I set that business up in Singapore. We had some good success. I then went on to work for a chemical and biological consulting firm, moved to The Hague for a short period to learn that business. We did work in Brussels with the European Union, then came back to Singapore to set that business up. We worked with regional government and security forces. Left that business about 18 months later when my first daughter was born, because I was just looking for a bit more kind of stability, not as much travel. But I always think of that period as my mini MBA when you set up your own business and you've got equity in it and you're having to wear a million different hats, and you've got a lot of concerns as running your own business, as you would know. And then I joined the company Worldwide Business Research in 2013, and I ran that business for about a decade. Grew the company from a handful of staff to about 70 staff when I left in 2022. Took us into a bunch of new markets, launched several new business verticals, and really left the business, in a great place and, with a lot of friends there, really good company. And then I had the opportunity to work for Money 2020, the beginning of 2023. They were coming back to Asia. It's very rare you'd have that chance to kind of build a team completely from scratch with a real powerhouse brand behind you. And I've never worked for a public company. So Money 2020 is a public business, listed on the London Stock Exchange. So kind of jumped at that opportunity. And I'm still there. I've launched the event in Bangkok, which happened in April, which you were at, Lynn, and podcasting, and it went really well. And we're all geared up now for the second edition. So that's really kind of had to go where I've got to. And I would just say through my career, I've just tried to really seize opportunities with two hands when they have come up.
Yeah, you're a creator and a driver, which is exciting to have. And the little bit that I've learned about Money 2020 since I was introduced to you a year or so ago, before the event, you and some of your counterparts, or I should say not counterparts, but you know what I mean. Yeah, it's such an experience. Money 2020 is not like a typical tech expo or whatnot. It really is such an experience. And it was really impressive to go to for my first time. Obviously, it was the first one here in Bangkok, but still just the way that you and your team conceptualize and implement things is quite interesting, especially for the tech world, the tech startup, for those that are a bit more analytical and they have a certain way about them. I was really impressed.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, one one of the things that kind of attracted me to the business, and it's been great kind of getting under the hood, is that Money takes more of a festival approach to events. So it's really kind of the godfather of fintech events. It's been around for over a decade in the US, in Europe, and now Asia again. But yeah, for us, because it's a ticketed event, a lot of other events may be free to attend, but because it's a ticketed event, everyone's buying their delegate pass. For us, the delegate experience is really the most important thing. Whereas maybe other events would rank the sponsor experience number one. For us, the delegate experience is super, super important. So that really shapes everything, like you said, from making sure attendees have a great time. We want them to feel like a rock star, whether they're flying a drone or kind of getting a massage or playing in an arcade or taking in groundbreaking content. We want people to really feel like they've made a fabulous decision on that time investment. And, you can see it across the show floor. Everything is premium, and we want people to be able to be relaxed, have a good time, and, make a bunch of new connections and do business. And that's a lot easier when you're feeling good and you're having a good time. No one really wants to feel like they're being shepherded in certain areas, or you can't even get water, which I've experienced at other events, and that doesn't really add to a good few days. So yeah, for us, we really think through and discuss we sweat the small stuff, I would say, which makes the overall kind of big picture experience fabulous.
Yeah, you can definitely tell it was quite the experience. But this podcast isn't necessarily about Money 2020, so
No.
I won't keep going down that rabbit hole because I feel like we could talk all day about that because it was super cool. But to be a driver and to have a team of people that look up to you as a leader to be able to navigate that. What would you say is maybe one of your biggest lessons that you've learned over the years, like leading groups like this to be able to create such amazing experiences?
I mean, a massive thing when you're leading teams is making sure you have the right team. So that there's three big buckets really, and it's nothing new, but three things I always think about is the people, and then you've got your product, and then you've got the processes, right, that reduce the friction to make the product fantastic. But on your question on the people, I think you've got to assemble a brilliant team, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious, but it's not very easy to do and very easy to say. But over the years, especially being in Singapore, certainly talent is in very high demand here. Certain sectors, certain things like sales, for example, it can be quite difficult to get the right people in. Within B2B events, sales is often very feature led. So it can be, here's our menu of options, option A, option B, option C, which one do you want to take? And that can work sometimes, but I think when you're selling kind of a large conceptual product, you need to do consultative sales. So especially getting the right talent in that can, you might have someone that's only got a couple of years of sales experience, but then they're in a room with a CEO of a large multinational and all of their kind of peers, and they're having to position your product in the best possible way. Not everyone can do that. So, when we've built a team at Money over the last couple of years of over 10 salespeople, and, finding those complementary skill sets and people that can really kind of hit the ground running. You support them as best you can, but you want them to go off and excel. So that's challenging sometimes. And I think you hire on kind of potential. Experience can be a bit of a red herring. Sometimes, you can see people that have got 20 years, 30 years, 40 years experience. Wonderful. But especially now, right, where things change so quickly and every company is different. They have their own quirks and unique aspects. You kind of have to be able to come in with an open mind and, unlearn sometimes what you've already learned, pick up new things. So again, how quickly can they do that? And can they flex to other personality styles, right? Because you can have within teams, you want to have complementary skill sets and personality styles and diversity of thought. But if you've got people that are too extreme in certain areas, so maybe they're extremely controlling or they're extremely analytical, that's great, and they can have very strong strengths. But if you want them to work in your team, can they flex to the other personality styles in your team, or are your team or the senior management always going to have to flex to them? So that I think that's something to always think about as well, is like, do you have people that can adapt and kind of unlearn what they've already learned to move forward fast? And these days as well, we're not all in the office, right? We're traveling a lot. It's not like it used to be where you could almost set people up and keep an eye on them all the time. You need adults, and you need people that when people aren't looking at them, or they're working from home, or they're on a business trip, they're still gonna kind of strive to do their best and be their best, and they're a real self-starter. I always think that you can put people in the right environment and you can give them all the tools and all the ammunition, but it's not your job to motivate them. I think sometimes people think that the leadership has to motivate their staff, but yeah, if they're working in the right culture and they've got the right supportive leadership around them and all the tools to succeed, why do you have to motivate them? They should be able to motivate themselves. So yeah, that would just be a few things I would say. But yeah, I mean, really important, get the right people on the bus, and if you have to, get the wrong people off it, because otherwise you'll never be able to scale.
Absolutely. Building a team is a lot more challenging than I think people initially think it's going to be. You think, oh, I'm just going to hire some people, and as long as they fit this little amount of criteria, that it'll be fine. But there's definitely a lot more to building a dynamic, effective team than just arbitrary hires.
Exactly, yeah. And even when you've built the right team, you've still got to invest the time to develop that team as well. I mean, it certainly you've got to give people that time investment. Maybe they don't succeed, but you better have done everything in your power to help them succeed before they get to that point. And that's important as well. So your direct line reports, for me, that's super important. But then are they giving their teams enough time, energy, support, space, attention when they need it to also get to where they need to get to? That's important as well. And managing people is difficult, right? People are complicated. People change day to day. People change week to week. Your top performer 1 month might in 4 months be your least performing person, and maybe that's because of something in their personal life, right? And that's on you to figure it out. And so it's a constant evolution, always changing. And I think the higher up you get in a business, your job title's really just chief problem solver. Yeah, you have to be open to solving problems daily, because there's always going to be a problem. And when you fix something in one department, then probably your attention comes off that department, and then you notice all the problems in the other areas, right? So it's always a balancing act, and where you're going to focus your time and energy. And there's only one of you as well, so that's why you have to have good people around you and be able to delegate.
Yeah, it's almost like Murphy's Law sometimes when that happens. Yeah.
It's going to happen, right? Definitely going to happen. Yeah.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will. When you were speaking, all I kept hearing was something that I don't know who said it, but somebody said it to me. We were having a conversation not too long ago, and then somebody else said it right after. Is salespeople are really good at selling themselves, and so as a leader too, it's our responsibility when we're hiring sales teams. And I know that's like you oversee the division for this region. Is that you also have to kind of like see through that and almost still see the potential too, because we're trained to, as salespeople, they're trained to sell themselves, and there could be potential underneath that. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people who do not have the depth behind it, and they might not be willing to learn. And so as a leader, it's up to us to be able to navigate that and kind of see behind the stuff, as well as see the potential in individuals. Not just during the hiring process, but even after, because sometimes our people can lose like disconnect from their own selves and their own potential and possibilities. And I think that I love the chief problem solver and in preventative, almost we're always trying to like be preventative too, I think, which is what makes a good leader.
Yeah. And it's never an exact science either. Hiring anybody, and sales included. I mean, they can have an awesome CV and have done some really good tenures in places. They can have all the best references, interview well, and it still might not work out, right? You can just do what you can do. And then you might interview someone that, you're not 100% sure on, but you want to give them a shot, and they go on to do amazing. So yeah, I mean, interview processes are important and you need to do your due diligence, but sometimes it may not work out for the right or wrong reasons. So again, sometimes you have to trust your gut as well. It's always a balancing act, as I say.
Well, there's an aspect of we can only do so much. Everybody
There
has
is.
to take responsibility for their own. And you said
Mhm.
it earlier is as a leader, it's your job to set up the right environment, continue to nurture that right environment. That right environment will grow and change and evolve and potentially pivot depending on what's going on around us or internally. But at the end of the day, taking responsibility for our own inactions and actions and letting them do the same.
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy, and then you touch right on it. It's not a foolproof thing. I know that Lynn and I both coached people around how to hire, when to hire, etc. And ultimately, you
Mhm.
can have all the best things going for you, and you're sure this person's going to be great, and then it doesn't work out, and it's tough, but it's very, very common that sometimes all the right things don't necessarily make it the right position or the right time or whatever. And I think that that's also a tough part about hiring and leadership in itself, because you are so invested in that person even before they've begun the actual work, and then for it to not work out before they've even really begun is depressing, heartbreaking sometimes when you're in that leadership position.
It is. But then at the same time, when it does work out with people, then it's probably one of the most rewarding things in the job. When you hire someone that either you're confident about or you just think is a high potential person, and then all of a sudden, they're taking on board your advice, they're listening to those around you, they've got that can-do attitude, they're a leader in the team without actually being a leader. Maybe they go through a bit of a rocky start, and then all of a sudden, they take off and they accelerate and they become one of your star performers and one of your go-to people. At the same time, that's a brilliant feeling when you see that. And from time to time, they may even tell you, they may even say, thank you so much, or they might leave and tell you, thank you for the impact you've had on my career. I've gone on to do all these great things, and it's because of you. I've had mentors and people that I can think of that's happened to me as well, right? Where they've invested in me, and because of their confidence in me and myself and taking a chance on me, I've gone off to do good things. So, that's probably one of the most rewarding things of being a leader at the same time. It doesn't always work out, but when it does, that's really what you're there for, I think. And you can change people's lives and people's career trajectories with the time you invest and your kindness as well, right? Be a kind person. I've worked for unkind leaders, and the ones you remember are the kind ones that maybe when the chips were down, they still invested that time and they got you back to where you needed to get to. So, yeah, I would always say as well, try and lead with empathy and kindness at the same time, because you never really know what someone's going through unless you have that conversation.
I have to say, I love that. And it's funny, I don't know because I only
Yeah.
know a couple of you from Money 2020, but I
Hmm.
feel like that's kind of the culture of the way your business is because of you, because of the couple of people that I do know. And so I think that that's a blessing, even or it's a compliment, even if it's not necessarily a company culture in the way that you lead. There has to be some because otherwise you
Mm.
wouldn't be as strong as a leader if the visions and the alignment wasn't happening above you as well. But it's unique, especially with a company as large as Money 2020, to have that transparency, that humility, that seeing people as human, and that, like you said, the empathy
Mm.
at a leadership position. And I love seeing it. We love seeing it because it's not the norm even on some a lot of small scale businesses as well. But to see it in a
That's
large
right.
scale business, I think it's a testament also to the success that you guys have.
I would say as well, I mean, I'm fortunate because Worldwide Business Research also had it, right? It was a great company to work for. There's a big focus there on work-life balance, mental health, making sure you feel heard. And because of that experience at WBR, when I was going through the interview process at Money, I'd already built a very successful business at WBR and pretty happy where I was, and I was comfortable. And when I was going through the interview process, I made sure that I tested for that in my questions in that interview process. But like you said, money has a wonderful culture, but I didn't know at the time. And I think if you're going to spend your time anywhere, because you spend the bulk of your time during the week at work, you want to make sure that you're working in a great culture, a safe culture where your ideas are valued, and where you can work in an environment to do your best work. So I would just say as well, when you when you are interviewing with people, make sure you ask and test for that, and because that's a really important thing. And also, your direct line report, or sorry, line manager, can you get on with that person? Make sure you almost interview them at the same time.
What are some questions that you always ask? Are there any questions that they're like, this is the question I must ask at every interview?
I always ask what makes you happy at work, because I always want to know, like, what gets them out of the bed in the morning and what motivates them to go into the office or to get online and to keep doing what they're doing. I always think that's really, really telling. I like to ask about what people do outside of work as well, because I think that's also important. What kind of a rounded person are you? Whatever it is, work's super important as well, like I say, but it shouldn't be work, 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 right? So, what do people do outside of work at the same time? And then probably ask people to give you an example. So, what's a time where you felt the most proud at work? Could you give me an example of what it was, and why you got the results that you were hoping to get? So they talk you through a case study. That's quite good as well. And then I would say, what could you give me an example of a time where you've kind of gone out of your way for someone at work to help them, to mentor them, or to get them through a kind of more challenging moment or difficult situation? Again, you get that example, but you kind of see the personality traits, the person that you're going to be reporting into and the business there. So there'd be some of the things I would kind of ask. I always think getting examples is good, because you get people to talk you through a story and moments in the office. Anything you would ask that I've missed? I'm always keen to add things to my utility belt.
No, I love those. And the one I love all of those. And the one thing I'll say about that is it also allows you to see behind the superficial answers as well, because sometimes especially those that are interviewing all the time, there's quick those responses that are natural, that we become disconnected to the truth. And I can only imagine like how some people would respond, because I've asked some of those questions. I'll definitely be implementing the other ones, and it almost kind of like puts them at ease, but also throws them off guard a little bit. And I'm always reflective on, if you want different results, do something differently. And so to be able to like get behind the answer, you have to ask different questions. Obviously, that's within regulation of the country that you live in, because sometimes some questions can't be asked, depending on where you live in the world, it's a bit more lax than in others. So, but yeah, I love that. And it's, and though, I will add though, it's also what I love, and I know I brought this up earlier, is that you are meaningfully asking those questions and taking them to heart, not just in the interview process, but also it's a part of your company culture. And because I've seen people who will ask these type of questions, and they're doing it because it seems like the cool thing or the now thing to ask these type of questions, but they're really not paying attention. They're not absorbing. They're not really actively listening and having that empathy. And there's no follow through on the other side, or the kind of the idea that you're creating in that interview environment is not necessarily the culture and the environment of the business. And with you, there's this cohesiveness, or with Money 2020 and you, there's this cohesiveness, which I think is another great point that we should bring up, is like, being a great leader is great. Having a great company, or building a great company, regardless of what position you're in, and being aligned with that vision, those values, those missions, the heartbeat of it, right, is so important. And so ask yourself, like, because even if you are a leader, having those hiring questions, if you're putting them into an environment that's not conducive to that, even though you're the leader, it's going to make you feel like you're disconnected to something, and then you're not setting them up for success. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I would say to your point around don't just ask questions because they're a tick box. I mean,
Yeah.
that's true in interviews, but that's true in everything, right? Especially in sales and research and editorial. Too many people now just go through the motions, and then maybe they've got some recording software even right outside of the interview, and they're going to go back to it later. But if you're going to ask a question, be fully present in the moment and really listening to what you're being told. I think that's becoming a bit of a lost art with
Yeah.
all the different distractions that we have now and everything that's going on and multitasking. I always think that I'm a terrible multitasker, but if you're going to do something, focus on that one thing, give it everything you've got and do it to the best of your ability, and then move on to the next thing, right? Too many times now we're trying to do 10 things at once or 5 things at once, and we're doing everything badly or everything kind of average rather than everything, one thing great. So yeah, when you ask a question, back it up, really listen. And to be honest, someone doesn't give you the best information when you ask the initial question. The great information that you're going to get is actually in the follow-up questions. So I might say to someone, what makes you happy at work? And they give me a 1 or a 2 line response. But then it's the follow-up questions that you're actually going to get the interesting data or information from them. What do you mean by that? Or could you tell me a little bit more? I'm a bit curious as to how that worked out for you. That's where you get into the real good stuff in a conversation. And so, yeah, too many times nowadays, people just take people at face value. And also, if you're trying to build trust with someone or build a relationship, or, maybe you want to work with someone as a business partner, the only way you'll ever kind of get them on board with you and your ideas and your business is to really be fully present and make sure you do ask all the right questions. And people love getting asked questions, right? People love talking about themselves and what they're doing and their achievements and where they've been. So, no one's really going to shut you down. And people are always nervous about, oh, it's a stupid question, but there are no really stupid questions, really, as long as you ask them in the right way. So yeah, I think it is becoming a bit of a lost art and too much digital distraction and these days as well with other things going on.
Absolutely. And I do want to
Yeah.
drop a line. I know Amanda has a question, but this is not just for business. This is also, we make
Yeah.
jokes about this in the dating world. I know you're married, but in the
Mm-hmm.
dating world, how superficial the tick questions are. And like, I'm looking at my girlfriend's like, no wonder you don't have a guy, because you're asking superficial questions. You're answering superficially. Like, you're not creating an environment that is of more depth. So just had to throw that
Yeah.
in, because
Well, I think one of the things you sent me in advance, because we're talking about dating now, is advice I would give to people, and you just because you brought up partners, the biggest piece of advice I would give is make sure that you do choose the right life partner. I know this isn't a business thing, but it has a profound impact on business and on your life. And asking the right questions in the dating process is a surefire way to help you do that. But the reason I say that is that, especially being in Singapore over the last 15 years, we're away from family. We've got a couple of kids here. We don't have that same level of support. I've had to travel a lot for work. Building companies is a great thing, but it takes up a lot of your energy and headspace and time. And sometimes you come home tired. If you don't have the right partner at home, that's really tough. That is really, really tough. And so I would just say that, when you are making that decision, kind of make sure that, you do pick the right partner, because they'll be your kind of number one confidant over the years, right? They'll be the person you talk to the most. They'll be the person that gives you advice when you need it. They'll be the person that's your sounding board. They'll help you when you've got to travel for business. They'll help you with childcare. It goes both ways, right? You've got to help them as well. But I think if you want to have any success in your life, and you want to get married, you don't have to get married, and make sure that you take your time and you do the right thing. I would say that would be my biggest piece of advice, because we all will go through difficult moments in life, right? There's lots of ups and downs, and there's lots of seasons, and one day something can be good, but a few months down the line, maybe you've had a bit of bad news or some family issues, or whatever it is, and you need to have the right person there beside you, helping you through things. And if you get it wrong, it can be a disaster, but if you get it right, it can be pretty good. So I would just say that that would be my biggest piece of advice, because you talked about dating. I thought I'd just
Well, I
get
love
that one in there.
I
Yeah.
love that. And actually, and Amanda can attest to this, it's actually one of the reasons why I'm still single because I was married for years and I've been divorced for a
Mm,
while. And it is because not that I haven't found the right person, but I know what I need and I know
mhm.
how much capacity I have and vice versa, how much capacity I need. And so I just haven't went there. And so I 100% agree with you because it can hold you
Mhm.
back, or you hold yourself back because of your nuances and the patterns that you play out with them. So it's both ways, the
Yeah,
internal and what they do. But yeah, I love that you added that because it is super important.
Absolutely. And I'm
it really
terminally
is.
single, but that's exactly how I feel about it. And I'll even go so far as to say, I also feel the same way about building a partnership within a business perspective as well.
Mm,
You've got to find a right partner because you're going to be the one that you're spilling all the stuff to. And you need to make sure that that partnership is good. So on both fronts, from a personal and from a business perspective, I agree with everything you said. From building that partnership is so important, and it trickles down in ways you can't even imagine. And I've definitely known plenty of people who are both clients as well as just friends who have had to navigate that world differently as they grow their businesses, as they grow their relationships. And it makes a big difference if you who you choose and why you choose them. So
yeah, I think
excellent advice.
you're right. I mean, a business partner is also, I mean, it's a work kind of husband or wife, but I think you want to have all the time, as much as possible. You won't have it all the time, but you want to have positive pressure when you're doing things. So you're still going to feel the pressure and you're still going to feel stressed, but at least it's in a positive mindset, right? That, a can-do mindset of, being optimistic or cautiously optimistic, and we can go and do this thing. I think if you have the wrong business partner or the wrong life partner, it becomes negative pressure, negative stress, and then you don't know necessarily how you can get yourself out of that unless you actually break off from that partnership. Not been through it in personal life, but been through it in work for sure with kind of business partners, and that can become super stressful, right? And you can have all the best ideas in the world, but if you're with the wrong business partner, then that doesn't get executed. And it can be bizarre. Things can be going well, and it can still be stressful, right? If you're with the wrong person, but if you're with the right person, things can be going bad, but it's still fun, and you still want to go to work, and you still think you can get through any challenge. So it does. It's such a big thing, but we don't talk about it. Nobody really talks about it. So I just think that we need to make that a bit more obvious to people that it's the yin and yang, right? You won't be able to perform unless you get that kind of partnership right.
Yeah, everything's interconnected. By the
Yeah.
way, Amanda, who's the husband, who's the wife in our diet?
That's a good question, Lynn. We'll have to break that down. I don't know. I was going
We're
to
gonna
say
have
maybe
to
my
have a
wife.
sidebar for that. But we Amanda and I actually have this conversation a lot because and especially with women partnerships, we don't see a
Mm.
lot of really successful entrepreneurial women partnerships in total. We definitely see some, but yeah, that's a whole other podcast to break down. I know we're almost at time. So, but I love that point, and I love the point about the personal because everything is interconnected. And so what's happening
Mhm.
home life is absolutely affecting your business, and vice versa. It can, if you're not aware and putting in the work or don't have the environment set up for success. And that includes the
That's
people.
right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree. And when you do get to a certain point, I mean, I'm not that old, but I mean, when you look at certain things, financial success or your net worth, or the kind of achievements you've got in your professional career, they always come secondary, I think, to your children and your family and the health of the family and your partnership. So yeah, sometimes we forget that and we put all of our chips in the business world, and then that stuff falls by the wayside, including your own health. So, make sure you do invest your time in those areas as well, because it'll pay it back. And your career is long, right? People forget that. Especially at the beginning of my career, I was very impatient. I wanted immediate results. So, I want to be an MD in a year. But, really, it's a long career. You've got decades to invest, and you can change course multiple times. But your family, they may not stick around. So I'd just say make sure you invest the time wisely and make the right choices. I learned that over the years.
Kids grow up.
They do
Yeah.
fast.
Tell me about it. Mine are 26, 27, 28. So, and it feels just like yesterday they were babies, and it's insane. They grow up so quick. Danny, this has been amazing. We can continue to talk to you. I feel like this is so easy. We can do a whole day with you. However, we're coming to the end. Is there any last little nugget that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I would just say that I would say enjoy the journey as much as the destination, because everyone wants to get to the final destination, which is whatever it is your picture of success. But if you're not enjoying the journey, then the destination isn't really all it's made out to be. You know, I know a lot of people, and myself included, that might get there, and then all of a sudden you have this kind of empty feeling and you think, what next? What do I do next? And it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be. And I think enjoying the journey is important as well, because I'll just give you a quick example of when I was at WBR. I mentioned I kind of grew that business, and we went through a few really good years, and we kind of came into 2020, and I was in Dubai in the beginning of 2020. We'd launched an Australia business, we'd expanded in Asia. I was in Dubai, and we were going to do an event in the Middle East, and I came back and the health pandemic hit. And if you were running a large scale B2B events business, it basically just shut down all of your opportunities and revenue streams. And kind of overnight, we went from, you know, everything looking super positive. I thought I'd kind of been through it, pretty much every challenge I could go through. I was wrong. And it felt like both the wings had fallen off the plane and we were plummeting towards the earth. And all of a sudden we were looking at cash burn and runway and, you know, how many months have we got? Everything was turned upside down. And we don't really talk about the pandemic as much now, but I remember at the time pivoting was the kind of in vogue word, wasn't it? You got to pivot really fast. That was a really tough period, but I would just say that because I built the right team and because I enjoyed the journey and I knew we had great product, that product translated into the different business verticals that we had. And we went on in 2021 with no in-person events, maybe one in-person event. We had our best ever net profit year for a long, long time. And then in 2022, we beat that in about 4 or 5 months, the whole year. So, you know, it's amazing how things can turn around, even in your kind of darkest moment. You know, things can turn around fast. So I just say, trust yourself, trust your team, trust the process, enjoy the journey. And you know, really amazing things can happen even when you think it's impossible. So yeah, I'd leave people on that.
I love that. Love it, love it, love it. I feel like the whole time I was just waiting for you to say the word, I had to pivot.
Yeah, I had to pivot. Pivot.
Pivot.
There was that episode of Friends, wasn't there, when they were getting the sofa up the stairs and Ross is shouting, pivot.
That's right. I feel like that was literally
that was the 3 years of the pandemic. Pivot.
The theme meme
yeah.
That pandemic, for sure. For sure. Well, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure. As Lynn said, we could talk to you forever and about many things within this.
It's fun.
For sure. Yeah. And how can people get in contact with you if they want to reach out?
I'm really active on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to get in touch with me. So if you search Danny Levy, I'm sure I'll come up, or put in Danny Levy Money 2020 to Google, and on my LinkedIn will come straight up. And if you do send me a direct message on there, I'll get back to you. And yeah, if you want to ask me any questions or learn more on Money 2020, that's the place to do it.
Yeah, I want to drop a plug for Money 2020. It's not just for tech startups and those in the money vertical, etc. It is such an experience, and it's great for all types of businesses and verticals and entrepreneurs and small businesses. So definitely check out Money 2020. Come see me in Bangkok, because I'll be at the Bangkok one. And yeah, so Danny, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. Really enjoyed it. And you've got a brilliant podcast. So thank you for having me on.
Really appreciate that. Yeah, make sure you're following Danny and go ahead and hit him up on LinkedIn. He is a man of his words. He is so approachable, which is incredible. A man of your position and stature. So we appreciate that. And check out Money 2020. depending on where you're listening from, they have different events all over the world, in Europe, in Southeast Asia, in the US, which the biggest one is in the US, right? Vegas is the biggest.
Yeah, it's going on right now as we record this episode. Yeah, that's the original. But Asia will overtake that in no time.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. And if you feel like this can absolutely influence or inspire somebody in your network, go ahead and share this podcast with your people. So that way we can spread the word about being on the pursuit of badasserie. So thank you, Danny.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Everything will be in the show notes. So make sure you are scrolling down just a little bit further to read more about Danny and to connect with him when you can.
Yeah. Till next time.
Get after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.